Welcome to the Bell Curve. Few games wear their contradictions so proudly as Super Smash Bros. Melee. It is at once a beloved party brawler played in student bedrooms across the world, and a fiercely technical competitive fighter whose scene has outlived several generations of consoles. It is simultaneously Nintendo's best-selling GameCube title, and a game the company has spent the better part of 2 decades looking faintly embarrassed about. And perhaps most remarkably, it is a title that was famously unfinished, built under crushing deadlines and released with rough edges that should have consigned it to obscurity. Instead, Melee has refused to die. In fact, its flaws became part of its charm, its breakneck pace part of its identity, and its contradictions part of its legend. To revisit it now is not just to revisit a game, but to examine a cultural moment. The early 2000s, a console war Nintendo was losing, and a development process that somehow gave us lightning in a bottle. To understand Melee's impact, you first need to rewind to 1999. The original Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo 64 was by almost every measure a modest experiment. Masahiro Sakurai, then a young designer at HAL Laboratory, had pitched a fighting game prototype called Dragon King: The Fighting Game. It was a skeletal concept, 4 polygonal characters on floating platforms, no health bars, only ring outs. It was simple, but it felt different. Nintendo, sensing an opportunity, slapped its mascots onto the prototype. Suddenly you had Mario punching Pikachu in the face, Link trading blows with Yoshi, and Donkey Kong slamming Kirby into oblivion. It was absurd, charming, and crucially accessible. No fiddly quarter circle inputs, no memorizing combos, just a few buttons and a simple objective: knock them off the stage. The game sold over 5 million copies on the N64, which for what was effectively a side project was remarkable. But more importantly, it planted the seed for something bigger. Nintendo's executives saw not just a quirky spin-off, but a possible tentpole franchise. And so, as the company prepared to launch its next console, the GameCube, Super Smash Bros. Was given pride of place. The sequel needed to be faster, flashier, and stuffed with fan service. And here's where the mythos of Melee begins. Planning for the game began in mid-1999, shortly after the release of Smash 64, with full development starting around October 2000. The GameCube was due to launch in late 2001, and Nintendo wanted Melee available almost immediately. Sakurai and his small team at HAL were given just 13 months to complete it. 13 months, for a game that would ship with 25 playable characters, over 20 stages, an orchestral soundtrack, and an ambitious array of single-player and multiplayer modes. To call that unreasonable is putting it politely. Sakurai himself spoke candidly about the brutal schedule. Endless all-nighters, minimal breaks, the sort of crunch that today would, or should, make headlines. He later admitted that much of the team was in a state of collapse by the end. And yet, sometimes desperation breeds creativity. Features were added at breakneck pace. Adventure mode with its side-scrolling levels was built almost on a whim. Dozens of trophies were included as a way of honouring Nintendo's back catalogue, cobbled together from model archives. Mechanics like air dodging and wave dashing weren't carefully designed to revolutionise competitive play. They were side effects of rushed coding. Melee's DNA is littered with what game historians would call emergent design, mechanics born not of intent but of accident. That's part of its legend. Wave dashing, the technique where characters slide across the ground by cancelling jumps with air dodges, was never supposed to exist. But neither were half the infinites, chain grabs or edge-cancelling tricks that define competitive Melee. And yet these quirks, these rough edges, became the scaffolding for one of the deepest fighting games ever played. Melee arrived in Japan on the 21st of November 2001, about 2 months after the GameCube's release. For a console struggling against the PS2 juggernaut, it was a godsend. Sales were explosive. By the time it reached North America on the 3rd of December 2001, Melee was already a phenomenon, and it quickly became the system's killer app. The box art itself told a story. In Japan, the cover was restrained. In North America, the design was busier, featuring multiple characters in mid-battle. Europe received yet another variant, adopting the American style but with adjusted fonts and layouts. These weren't trivial differences, these reflected Nintendo's ongoing struggle to balance its identity between regions. austere and serious in Japan, colourful and chaotic in the West. Critics lavishly praised the game, with review scores in the 90s praising its roster, its speed, and its wealth of content. For many players, it was the first GameCube game they owned. For some, it was the reason they bought the system at all. Booting up Melee even today feels striking. The orchestral score, composed by Hirokazu Ando and Shogo Sakai, has a grandeur fare beyond its predecessor's jaunty MIDI ditties. The menus bristle with options. Characters leap from the selection screen, not just Nintendo stalwarts, but surprise guests like Marth and Roy from Fire Emblem, a series largely unknown to the West at the time. The mechanics are where Melee truly distinguished itself. It was fast, alarmingly so. Characters darted across the screen, attacks came out in frames, combos flowed with ferocious momentum. Where Smash 64 had been a playful proof of concept, Melee felt like a full-bodied fighter. But it was also chaotic. Items dropped in to wreak havoc. Stages had hazards, platforms, shifting layouts. A serious fight could be undone by a bomb appearing at the wrong moment. Single-player content was surprisingly rich. Adventure mode offered platforming levels themed around Nintendo's history. Event matches presented specific challenges, Giant Bowser or Link versus a horde of Yoshis. Classic mode provided an arcade-style ladder of opponents. These modes ensured that even those without friends nearby had reasons to return. The multiplayer, though, was the soul of the game. 4 friends on a couch, the screen filled with explosions, characters flying in every direction. It was both incomprehensible and utterly joyful. However, whilst Melee is undeniably brilliant, it is also deeply flawed. Its speed, whilst exhilarating, is sometimes punishing. For newcomers, the pace can be overwhelming, the screen a blur of movement. Its balance is famously lopsided. Fox and Marth dominate, while characters like Pikachu exist seemingly as jokes. Many modes feel unfinished, products of their rushed creation. The AI is erratic, the adventure stages are clunky, and the game offers little in the way of tutorializing. But those flaws are precisely why it endures. The imbalance gave the game character. The speed provided a skill ceiling so high that, 20 years on, professional players are still discovering new techniques. Melee is a broken toy, but it's one you can't put down. Melee's arrival in 2001 came at a transitional moment in gaming culture. Fighting games, once dominated in the arcade era, were waning. The fighting game community was fractured, Street Fighter between eras, Tekken entrenched in complexity, but Melee offered something fresh, a game that could be enjoyed casually but contained hidden depths for those willing to dig. The grassroots competitive scene grew organically. Tournaments like Tournament Go and later Evo revealed a new kind of competitive Smash. Fast, technical, and thrilling to watch. Nintendo, infamously, wanted nothing to do with it. The company saw Smash as a party game, not an esport. For years it actively resisted competitive Melee, refusing sponsorships, and at times even trying to shut down tournaments. This only deepened the community's resolve, however. Melee became the underdog fighter, thriving in spite of its creator. Regional differences were everywhere. The Japanese version contained slightly different trophies, certain references were censored in the West, often for reasons of cultural sensitivity or copyright. PAL players meanwhile suffered from slower game speeds due to the 50Hz standard of European televisions, a subtle but significant difference that altered competitive play. Comparisons with contemporaries only reinforced its singularity. On the PlayStation 2, Tekken 4 offered technical mastery but little spectacle. On the Xbox, Dead or Alive 3 dazzled visually but lacked staying power. The Dreamcast, by then dying, had given us Soul Calibur, but its seam was fading. Melee stood apart, anarchic, fast, and utterly Nintendo. It's hard to think of another title that has endured quite like Melee. Competitive scenes usually move on, either through sequels or community fatigue, but Melee has survived Brawl, Smash 4, and even the behemoth that is Smash Ultimate. Why? Because no other entry feels quite the same. Later games slowed the pace, smoothed the rough edges, and prioritised accessibility, but in doing so, they lost the peculiar electricity of Melee. For some, Melee is simply the best Smash game ever made. For others, it's an exhausting relic, too fast, too technical, too exclusive. Both perspectives are valid. What cannot be denied is its cultural impact. It shaped the trajectory of competitive Smash, influenced Nintendo's relationship with its fans, and cemented the GameCube's legacy. Super Smash Bros. Melee should not have worked. It was rushed, unfinished, unbalanced, and in many ways un-Nintendo. And yet that very chaos produced something unforgettable. It was a game too fast for its own good, too rough to be refined, too strange to be repeated. And maybe that's why it still matters, because sometimes greatness doesn't come from polish or planning, but from accidents. From a team pushed beyond reason, from mechanics no one intended, from a community that refused to let go. Melee is, in every sense, a beautiful accident. And it is still, after more than 2 decades, the game that refused to die. Ready for round 2? Remember to like, comment and subscribe to The Bell Curve for more games that defined an era.